Today's episode is brought to you by Kentucky Private Lending. Reach out to them to start your journey today. KentuckyPL.com.
The Investor Tribe podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are not attorneys, financial advisors, or licensed tax professionals. The opinions expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and should not be taken as legal, financial, or investment advice. All investments carry risk, including loss of principal. Always do your own due diligence, consult qualified professionals, and make informed decisions based on your unique situation.
I'm Anthony Spurlock.
I'm Milton Ali, and you're watching the Investor Tribe podcast.
I think it's so important for people to have resources in their life. We often talk about building yourself a team. When you are an investor or you're just a regular buyer, it's important for you to have a team.
I wish I would have owned that property. I should have spent a little bit extra money. And sometimes it's tough to do at the time, but in hindsight, you look back and the things you missed or you should have or could have owned. But what advice do you have for a new investor that wants to try to get out of that rat race?
You know what a professional tenant is?
I've seen some. I've heard horror stories from landlords.
Yeah.
But how do you know they're a professional tenant? And how do you screen against that or protect yourself is the big question.
To see him walk away with a $98,000 check at the closing table from a flip that we had put together, and it was amazing for him to walk away with that kind of money.
When you are talking to an agent who's going to be able to represent an investor at a high level, there's a set of skills and a system that they need to follow and understand in order to have the outcomes that they would like for their business, as well as for their investor and what their goals are.
Why would you go with a hard money loan versus a traditional, conventional loan?
Well, honestly, it really depends on what you're buying and why. But the reality is most conventional financing isn't going to pick up or finance the properties that you want to finance if you're planning to flip them, right? For a conventional home loan to work, the property basically has to be ready to go. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be functional and livable and all those fun things. A lot of these flip properties that you're going through just aren't, right? So that's where hard money is going to be a good way in, because a hard money lender is going to look at what the property is going to be worth when it's done rather than what it's worth right now. You know what I mean? That's the main reason for the difference between the two. But I mean, Eric can dive in more.
Yep, I would agree with what he said. I'm a former banker myself, so I had a little bit of experience in the traditional lending world as opposed to what I'm doing now with hard money and private lending. And he hit the nail on the head, because when I was at the bank, we would always have investors coming to us with what looked like great opportunities. And I can recall even going to the higher ups at our bank and saying, "Hey, this is a good deal. Can we fund it for them?" And there was just no interest in it. It was too short term. They didn't like the speculative nature of it and being involved in the rehab. Of course, if you're doing a larger scale construction project, that may be a different story. But with what we deal in, which is all residential, all investment property, primarily 1 to 4 unit. We're talking like 6-month loans. The banks really aren't going to have, much interest in doing that. Now, to his point, once the property's been rehabbed and you got a shiny product on hand, they'll lend you that money all day long. So that's really, where we come in. That's all we do. So, we're there for you in that respect. I think also in addition to that, just the underwriting is going to be a lot different. If you haven't worked with a hard money lender or private lender before, you'll probably be surprised at, how little we ask of you. With a bank, you're going to be required to submit all your tax returns and financials. And if you own a business now, we need to get into those financials as well. With our business, we, consider ourselves asset-based lenders, meaning we're really primarily underwriting the property itself. So we want to know where that property is located, how much you're buying it for, what the rehab cost is, and also the scope of that project, how involved is it. Ultimately, as John mentioned, we want to know what it's likely to appraise for when you complete the project, and ultimately what your exit strategy is. Are you refinancing and keeping it as a long-term rental, or are you flipping it? So with that, we don't have to dig as far in on your debt to income ratios and collecting all your financials. There are some things I know we'll talk about today of how you can kind of best position yourself to get financing from a company like ours, but it's just a lot less involved, and therefore can be very efficient and very quick. Like, you can get funding in as little as 10 days, whereas, to my knowledge, with any traditional funding source, you're probably looking 30, 45 day type time
That's
frame.
what I was going to comment on, is there are a few small banks that'll do those flip loans, but even those guys that do, they want to close in 30, 45 days. Most of these contracts are 10 to 15 days. They know that the fast money is what matters. They want to know that it shows up. And unfortunately, the fallout rate with banks is higher too. You may think you're well applied, but underwriting at a bank is far more likely to turn you down because of their criteria. So you may get into the process, waste your time and money, and get behind. And I sell to these banks. Those are where those loans go. So I'm not telling you they're terrible. I'm just telling you the realities of what you're doing rely more on efficiency and execution than squeezing every penny out. And that's where he's going to shine, is his efficiencies are going to get you to the closing table much, much, much faster. And that's what's going to win you the deal when you're negotiating, compared to even if you are able to find a bank that'll host your flips.
Okay. Well, this kind of for Sharon and Chad, what mistakes do you see investors, making, either buying their first property or managing the property themselves? What are some pitfalls and things? What's some advice you'd have for those first-time investors?
Well, for the first-time investors, since we just finished up talking about the financing, is from the very beginning, you need to consider the cost of a property manager in your financing. Even if you feel like you're going to manage it yourself, at some point you may not want to. You may want, so you want to kind of factor that in as one of your costs, because a lot of people just think about the rehab costs and they don't think about after they own it. The other big mistake is finding properties that are super cheap, and that makes them awesome, but then they're in a location that no one would want to live. So do a little bit of research on the area rent, and if you're out of town, that's fine. You'll have a great realtor who will research the area, but if you live in Louisville, get out and drive the area. Drive it in the evening. Drive it on a weekend. Because a house on Sunday morning looks way different than a Saturday night.
So Sharon is calling me out because I do deals. Here's the thing. I do deals all over, and I find phenomenal deals, and then I give them to Sharon to rent out. So she's really calling me out. She's like, she's because I'm like, rent this trap house out, and so she's like, I'm scared to get out the car. I'm scared to get out the car. What are you doing? And so I think that's so important. And so our next question is,
Milton.
Yeah, Chad. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say going in without an inspection, right? Obviously, through your walkthroughs, even though you may go several times, certain things will jump out at you. With an inspection, you're going to get each and every component of the house looked at, which maintenance costs are going to be very important as you go about your investing. Knowing what kind of wiring's there. Is there knob and tube wiring? Is the wiring been updated? What about the plumbing? Or has the plumbing been updated, or is it using old and antiquated pipes like galvanized steel? Obviously, the roof, looking at the foundation, looking at the framing. Sometimes, even as a home inspector, you're going through things. It's not till you make a second or third trip that, something jumps out at you. So I would say, going in without having full knowledge would be one mistake.
Can I piggyback on that before you jump? Yeah. He is absolutely right, because let me tell you, I would say buying a house is like buying a pair of shoes. In the store, you put them on, you walk around, and they're like, hey, that really feels good. Then you wear them to that party that you got to stand in them for 6 hours, and at the end of that 6 hours, you're like, holy moly. So yes, when you walk through that house and you put all your prettiness on it, everything's fine. Then that tenant moves in, and I promise you, I just got a text yesterday. There's something you didn't notice, and that won't happen until somebody is using that house over and over, until they're running the water for more than 5 minutes. And the inspector is the key to help you see some of that ahead of time, because the day you move in a tenant, I don't care how beautiful it is, that's when you're going to get all the phone calls of the toilet's not really flushing and use the inspection. Best money you'll ever spend.
And Chad, what are some of the, I know you mentioned a couple, but the top 3 things that could turn one of those cheaper houses into a money pit for a first-time investor, where it takes them a while to get their money back out of it?
Well, electrical, plumbing, roof, and then structural. Those are the 4 big things. So structural, looking at, the framing, especially if you have a crawl space, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for, termite damage, water damage, mold growth. And I know even though you're wanting to look at the house, you're probably not crawling in the crawl space. So that's one of the things that I do. So yeah, I would say, electrical and plumbing, are those things. Yeah.
And something that, it's great to have the inspection, but you also want to do, your own research and due diligence. I had a mentor that said, don't buy anything next to a bar, a pawn shop, a bus stop. Like and I said, why not next to a bus stop? They said, you'll get bottles, you'll get stuff, you'll get your front yard be trashed all of the time. It's a convenience if the tenant was on it, needed to ride a bus. But he said, get one a couple doors down where they're close to a bus line, but don't be at the bus stop. And if you've got something near a bar, pawn shop, don't be surprised if you get knocks on your door, you get stuff stolen from you, you have desperate people or inebriated people damaging your property, so just stay away from that. Also, railroad tracks can be another thing to stay away from. I know there's some hedge funds that they don't want to buy near commercial properties, they don't want to buy near the things I mentioned. I like buying near cemeteries, and we're going to do a podcast, I think, on that, because it's quiet, neighbors don't complain, they don't take up any parking spaces, and it's quiet green space.
I actually have a house for sale that's across the street from a cemetery. I mean, it's nice and cheap. So, Sharon, what top mistakes do people make when they are looking to hire property management or even try to manage themselves that can really trip them up and really make it a bad experience?
I think it's setting the expectations. Generally speaking, when I get a call from someone asking about property management, they ask, how much do you charge? But they don't ask me, how do I communicate? They don't ask me about how quickly I get back to maintenance. They sometimes do ask me if I have my own maintenance team, but they don't ask me, is it a handyman maintenance team or is it a real contractor maintenance team? They're like, do you have your own maintenance team and how much do you cost? And so there's so much more to that. I have taken over properties from other property management companies, and the number one issue I hear is communication or a lack of communication. So if you know yourself. So if you send a text out and you expect a text response within, let's say 15, 20 minutes, you need to tell that to your property manager. Hey, I like to text, and I like to text and get a response. And just see if that person, even if you go ahead and go with that person and they don't communicate in your style, at least you'll know. So I think that's the big thing, is not understanding the full expectations of what that person's going to do.
It is so important as a professional that whoever you work with, the number one rule of life, if you take nothing away from today, is answer your phone.
Except
Answer
when
your
you're
phone.
on the podcast, because I've missed 3.
Of course, except, but so answer your phone. You can make a lot more money if you answered your phone. Yes, you do have to deal with people that you may not want to have a conversation with, yet that makes you stronger. The reason why I work with this panel is because they answer the phone. When I call Chad for an inspection, he answers the phone and returns my call. When I'm asking Eric for money, which is often, he answers the phone. And, it's so important. John answers the phone. It can be months between deals, but he answers the phone. And that is so important. I cannot stress that enough. This is for everyone, okay? So if you can go back to when you first started and you can stop yourself from making a mistake, what would that be?
For your first investment property.
For your first investment property, not your life, but your first yeah. So, and then we'll get to the audience questions. And so that's so if it was one thing that you can that you can go back to.
I paid off my house and I will never do that again.
Why is that?
So it's a long explanation. It may be too long for this and need its own podcast, but monetarily it is a pretty bad financial decision to pay off a home. The shortest, simplest version I can give you is if I can give you 30 years of guaranteed money at say 7%, and you could stick it in the stock market and earn roughly guaranteed 11.5%, why on earth would you ever pay down that 7% when you could just buy more stock and earn 11%? And that's the reality, is at no point in American history has the S&P 500 underperformed 11% on a 30-year running average. That means if you secure money for under 11% and you invest the difference in the market, you will make 4% for free. That's just on the surface. Now, beyond that, mortgages are an inflation hedge, which means the money you make today is much harder to make than it will be in the future. As an example, if I made 100 grand 10 years ago, I was making a whole lot of money. If I make 100 grand a day, that's not such a big deal, but my mortgage payment is still the same. What that means is my money acquisition, like how much work I had to work to acquire the mortgage payment, is more today than it is on year 25 for a mortgage. So it behooves me to hold the mortgage longer because my money gets more valuable. On top of that, most humans don't financially understand how compounding interest returns work. But if you watch a bell curve of a mortgage or the investing hockey stick from when, say, Warren Buffett or any other investor invests, what commonly happens is it goes real slow, and then all of a sudden, because compounding interest takes effect, and that's exactly what happens on a mortgage when you pay it down. So while your money is getting easier to make and harder for everybody else to earn, your mortgage payment is staying stagnant, your tenant is paying that payment, it is curving in your benefit over time, meaning it's paying more to principal. The house is appreciating in a compounding fashion year over year, which means your debt against your asset is better clearance the longer you hold it. And beyond all this, anything that's on a loan isn't taxed. Your money that you use to pay off a mortgage, congratulations. If you made $100 and you pay that extra to your mortgage, you had to actually make $135. Whereas if I take money from my tenants and just let them pay the mortgage, I pay no taxes and I get to keep all of my money. There's really no financial incentive to pay off a home. There is emotional incentive and security, and I will 100% back that for some people, they need that financial security. But I'm a numbers guy. I'm here to get rich real fast, and there is no way to do that with a paid off home. I house hacked my first house. I took the first 7 years of house hacking with all my buddies and paid off the mortgage. I was so excited. I waited 30 days on the next first of the month. You know what happened? I saved $900. Woo! Yay! And about 3 months later, somebody said, why don't you use the house to buy more houses? So I said, okay. Took out a loan for $150,000, and I've been buying more and more houses ever since. And now, instead of having one paid off asset that appreciates at 3% per year, pays down debt at about 4% per year, and hedges inflation, I have 13. There is no comparison financially as to why you should not pay off a home. It is 100% an emotional decision, and it's an okay one to make. But I made that mistake. I put all that money in, and if I'd started 8 years sooner, I wouldn't have 13. I'd have 30 because of how compounding works.
Any other advice or mistakes from the first one?
That one was pretty good.
Sharon's got it.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't have anything as cool as that. My first one, my first purchase, and I don't know that I would say it was a mistake. I would say it's my advice. If you're a procrastinator, like you're always gonna, if gonna is in your sentences often, then this was what I did, and I would say it hasn't been a mistake, it's been a challenge. But I just bought a house. I'm a property manager. I was managing the property was for sale, and I knew there was already a tenant in it that paid. She paid all the time until I bought it. So I felt comfortable. I overpaid for the property, so that may be the mistake. But I would say the gonna. So that was when I was always I'm gonna. And I just, one day I said, I'm just gonna do it. So that would be my only advice maybe, is just, you might, just don't make a real big, like, stupid mistake. But I've not lost any money on the house, and we talk every first of the month when she's not gonna pay the rent. Okay. But other than that, she does usually pay.
Awesome.
I'll throw in a different flavor. Maybe one for anybody who's currently or considering getting into this business with partners. I've experienced this both personally and seen some of our clients go through similar phases. And to be clear, I'm not talking about my partners in Kentucky Private Lending. They're fantastic people. We have a great relationship. But no, I've experienced it, one, with a property that my wife and I purchased along with her parents and her brother and his wife. Thought we might start us a little family real estate business. What ultimately happened was, on the front end, it seemed like we had kind of all the pieces of the puzzle, but we didn't quite commit to like who's responsible for what on the front end. And so the family's okay. We all love each other. Everybody's good. But there was some, stressful times and, a little tension over, whose responsibility, this and that. And then I've seen that, turn into larger issues with some of our clients. And I always tell anyone bringing a deal to me with a partner, like, even if it is your family, make sure you have agreements in writing. You fully understand who's responsible for what. We've seen scenarios where it's like, well, this guy knows how to manage the heck out of a rehab project, so he's responsible for that. And I got a little money, so I'm taking care of the financial piece. But then what happens at the end, when there's money on the table, then you start to have the disagreements of, well, I did all the work, so I should get more of the profit. Well, I put up my money, so I should. And it's like, well, if you just have it ironclad in writing, everyone knows their role and what the expectations are. Partners are fantastic. If you don't, it can create a lot of headache and a lot of tension and affect relationships and business.
I can piggyback on family. Literally, I had a partnership with a family member, and they wanted a person that rhymes with blister to move in with us, move into the property. The whole family was mad at us in the partnership because we wouldn't let the person move into the property. And we were thinking the person doesn't pay on time, person has a credit score in the 3s. We just did not want any part of it. And I did not go. I went against my better judgment to say, okay, well, I'm in the business. And I was like, you do not work with family unless you can have something set up. It just ended badly. And it ended poorly. And there's people that are not speaking to each other. It can be problematic. And so please be careful as you're building the partnerships with family members. Yeah, go for it.
And I will say, make sure you have a good partnership with your tax guy. I actually just met with ours this morning. We bought 2 apartment buildings from my parents, and he said whenever you're buying from family, the IRS scrutinizes that very much, because a lot of times people can just be trying to hide and move assets. So fortunately, we did things in a pretty good way to where, he says things look good, but that was dumb luck. If you are going to be purchasing, especially from family, definitely have a trusted tax advisor look at that, because you don't want a year or 2 later the IRS coming after you and whoever sold you the property.
Okay. Mike, you got anything for us?
For investments? Personal experience? I made, my first investment property, I ended up thinking I was going to be a flip house. Ran into too much cost on there. So I didn't get an inspector. Problem 1. Found out, ran into a lot more problems with that. Ended up living in the house, renting out my other house. But it worked out in the long run, because, 10, 15 years later, ended up turning an $80,000 profit out of it. So I got lucky on that property, but that was my first one, and that's what it is. This was prior to knowing any of these guys. I thought I could do it on my own, and I think I just got lucky a little bit on that investment property, but it ended up working out for me.
Hampton, do you want to share our story from 7 years ago? It's not good. Check out the podcast. We did a podcast. You'll have to go in our archives, go back in our YouTube channel to really dig for this. But we lost $80,000, so you don't have to. And that was really fun. Fun for a podcast, horrible in the moment. And so now we want to open it up to the audience to ask any questions. I have to give you the microphone, so just be patient with us. Right here? Okay, hold on.
So thank you for all your knowledge, all you real estate professionals, just being up here, because it helps me as a solo agent. Question, Ms. Bell, tell me the difference between property manager and a project manager. What are how different are the roles versus what you do as property manager versus somebody who actually is overseeing the project from beginning to end?
Actually, we do oversee rehabs for our clients. We have several clients that are located outside of Louisville,
yes,
so that is a requirement. But the difference is more of a project when I'm managing a project, I'm more of a GC. I'm making sure the plumber showed up, they did their work.
That's exactly
that sort of thing, and then I'm in and out. There's generally a flat fee when the property becomes rented. I'm out of that role, and then I move into more of a maintenance role. So in that role, I'm helping find a tenant and setting the price for it, more marketing the property, and then of course tenant relations. And
that's awesome.
They pay.
You're a double-edged sword, so you go from one role and then you wear another hat.
You kind of have to, because Louisville is a very popular area for out-of-town investors. So in order to be in this particular side of real estate, you have to be prepared to work with people who do not live in the area that you're in.
So I just wanted to ask a real quick question of the panel. And I know that there are 2 people who lend money on the panel. What's just the silliest question, what is the difference? Do I start off with Eric and I work my way over to John? Can y'all explain a scenario where the way that would exactly happen and take place? Like, where do I start and where do I end?
For an ugly house. For an ugly house, like for a flip?
For an ugly house or, you know, a value add, like a flip?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a common scenario and one that John and I collaborate on quite a bit would be, since we're talking about rentals today, let's say you've identified a property and your intention is to buy it. You're going to need to do some rehab to this house because it's ugly, as Hampton said, and ultimately you want to hang on to it as a long-term rental. So you would, in that scenario, you could come to me first. I would underwrite the deal from the aspect of how much are you purchasing it for, how much do you need to make it pretty, I can work with you on how that process goes, how we underwrite it, the pricing, all of that. Get you approved, get you closed, and fund the draws to complete the project. Then as you're getting, toward completion of that project, you can head right on over to John and start the process for whatever product he would recommend, maybe a DSCR type loan, so that you can refinance to pay off what you owe us and ultimately be into a loan with him for the long term that is where the property's cash flowing. Ideally, hopefully you've cashed out as well so that you don't have money tied up in it, but I'll let you speak more to that end.
No, I mean, Eric pretty much hit the nail on the head. What we practice the most is we're the lenders for the BRRRR method, if you all are familiar. BRRRR is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. If you follow that practice, right, like that's the exact order it's coming in, and that's the goal of it, is to end up with none of your own money in the transaction, right? Eric didn't give any numbers. I'll give just some quick ones. He's probably going to want between 10 and 20% down of the purchase price to get it done, right? And let's say that you're going to go in and buy the property for $100,000 and put $50,000 worth of rehab in it. That means that you're going to be into the property for $150,000 out of pocket, right? Most people are going to target an ARV on something like that of somewhere between $210,000 and $220,000. As long as that $150,000 is 80% or less than what the new appraisal value is, I can refinance what Eric has given you all for money, and you all should have none of your own money in the project, right? That's the goal, because if you can repeat that several times, you end up with 4 or 5 properties that each have approximately 20 to 25% equity in them that you've put no money into. And with 20 to 25% equity, each property should comfortably cash flow at about 130%, which gives enough to pay her and her management, and then leaves enough left over for you to still profit, right? I mean, that's basically the simple rundown is the BRRRR method.
You talked about the BRRRR method there. Is there any limit on the number of loans or the number of properties you could do using that formula?
So yes and no. Okay, so first, there's 3 types of loans that you can get for investment properties. 2 of them don't care what your limits are, okay? Conventional, though, which is the most common way to finance them, cares. You can only have a maximum of 10 finance properties with conventional loans, no matter who you are. That's a government standard. There's no way around it. Once you hit 11 properties, you have to start acquiring either private financing, lender funding, or something not backed up by Fannie and Freddie in some way.
I dream about owning my own home, but I do appreciate the recipe of how to get started. But what does that look like as far as a credit score, things like that? Because that's where it starts. I mean, I hear people say, I'm using other people's money. I was like, how? And I just sometimes I can't fathom that. And being here today has kind of opened, the cobwebs in my brain to that this is possible, and everybody wants to think, oh, you got to be married to do this. You have to be, a joint relationship, But I see people that are excelling and being successful doing this, and you guys are proof. You guys and girls are proof that it can happen. So what does that look like from the bottom floor,
I started mine house hacking, and that was where I bought a house and rented out the rooms because honestly I couldn't afford the house. I mean, the paper said I could afford the house because I know how the paper works, but I could not afford the house personally. Today, knowing what I know now, if I was going to go restart, if I didn't have my own personal home to start with, I'd look into something called a home style loan. It's like a rehab loan, but it's for primary homeowners. It's something that I write. It's the same thing Eric writes for hard money, but it's only for primaries, and you can only use it once, okay? And I would use that to rehab in my equity position so that I'm not out cash flow. Once I've got that completed, I would probably try to use that as leverage. I'd take out a home equity line of credit, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on that equity I just created by rehabbing that home. That $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 would be my down payment for Eric's hard money loan. That hard money loan would then carry me to mine, and Chad would help us make sure we're buying the right property, and she would help us manage it on the end. As for credit scores, I tell people all the time that there's almost no category in home loans that are pass or fail. It's almost always a balancing act, right? Lenders commonly say, hey, we've got the 3 C's, your credit, your collateral, and your capacity. The better your credit is, the worse capacity you can have, and I can still approve you. If I've got an 800 borrower telling me they can handle a 50% debt load, I believe you. I got a 400 credit score borrower telling me they can handle a 30% debt load, I do not believe you, okay? So it's kind of a sliding scale to a certain extent, but the 3 C's are credit, collateral, capacity, and what we try to find in all 3 of those for the mainline minimums, not hard minimums, is 620 credit. We want to see collateral with a 10% investment from you, preferably for most investment properties or more. And for your capacity, we want to make sure that you can doubly afford that home and your primary home together. If you meet those 3 matrices, you're probably going to be able to find financing. If you do substantially better in one, I'll probably be able to slack off on the others. Does that kind of?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate that he jumped in and provided that context as well, because a lot of times, especially when we're talking to, let's just say you're interested in getting some funding from us and we've never worked together before, it'd be a new relationship, your first investment, all of that. If you're telling me that you want to buy and hold, you're not just trying to flip to start or anything like that, a lot of times that's where I'm like, well, hey, who are you working with, like John, or if you don't have somebody, let me connect you with him to have that conversation. Because the last thing we'd want to do, just to give you some guideline, like I mentioned, we don't collect financials, tax returns, all of that. We do run your credit, but on paper, our minimum credit score is like 600. And I think a lot of people, when they think about hard money, they kind of have a misconception that like, oh, that's just funding for people who can't get approved by banks. And it's like, well, no, that's not really true. It can be a useful tool. But with something like credit score, the last thing we would want to do is say, well, you meet our qualifications, so here you go, here's the money, do the deal. And then you go find out from a traditional lender, whoever's going to do your long-term financing, well, we can't approve you for whatever reason. So, I think it's helpful to get his context, his game plan, and then you can plug right in with us. We'll get you jump started and ultimately back with your long-term lender.
So as we think about the tribe, we think about how the team works. The way that I've worked in the past is we'll go with hard money and we'll use Eric, and Eric would then, lend us the money, right? So we can start off with very little money. We can start off with about $15,000, right? $15,000 to $20,000. It does not require a lot. If you have $10,000 and your buddy has $10,000, you can try to partner together for something, okay? You want to have an exit strategy because the Stephen Covey book talks about begin with the end in mind. So let's look at what the exit strategy is. We want to hold this house and make money. Without getting into deep numbers, I'm going with Eric, and then my due diligence, I'm having Chad inspect the property. That's part of my due diligence. I'm also part of my due diligence, I'm also reaching out to Mike DeVito. Can you even insure this thing? Based on my after repair value and based on what work needs to be done. Sharon would tell you to call her first, right? To see if it's even rentable. Will she get out the car in that particular area, right? And Sharon's bold, and that's why I work with Sharon, because she's all over the place. She'll go places. She'll just, hey, I'm out. I'm looking at a house. I'm working at a house. I'm like, oh, I love you because you're outside, like the kids will say, like I am, right? And so then what happens was I did give her one house, and she was like, I'm really scared to get out of the car. I was like, that's kind of uncharacteristic. But if you're scared to get out of the car, in her defense, I was showing this same house, and my client pulled out a gun on the neighbors. And so, look, but she still could have looked at it. No, I'm kidding. But, and so, in her defense, she was scared to get out of the car for a reason. So, maybe it would be wise to reach out to property management to see where you're in, if you're going to begin with the end in mind, what is it going to realistically rent for? Who is comfortable, right? So part of my due diligence is speaking to a Mike DeVito for the insurance, is speaking to Sharon. And then for a refinance loan, I go to John, right? So John refinances, gets me out of the high interest debt that I have with Eric. Eric can close in 10 days. However, it's at a higher rate of interest. I don't really care about that high rate of interest because I'm here to make the property better, and I got the cash quicker because 9 times out of 10, the seller needed that cash very fast, right? So once I was able to secure the property with Eric's money, I was able to perform due diligence with everyone else in the panel. I take it to John, and then he gets me out of the high interest debt that I have into a lower interest debt, and I move on from there. Does that make sense? And from there, there's a team of real estate agents that you can work with that I highly recommend you finding a investor-friendly realtor to help you through as well. They're not here to run your business, but they're here to help you find property. Okay. The other piece of it is Hampton and I want to thank everybody for coming on out. Am I missing something?
No, never. There's just a few things he missed, though. No, I'm just kidding with you. No, Milton did cover a lot. There's also, you can learn, it's important to build your team. It is important also continually further your education. Learn, talk to the people, go to meetups, play real estate games, watch YouTube videos, watch a podcast like the Investor Tribe. At a lot of these meetups, you learn from what other people are doing. You also learn what opportunities are out there, what properties are going for, problems they've had, if they've had an issue with the city, with a squatter. There's been some changes in squatter laws in Kentucky. So it's important to keep up on all that. So you may be able to get things done quicker, faster, cheaper, better, more efficiently than if you hadn't gone to a meetup and learned what someone else experienced. So it's, we talk about, wealth is work. So it's not given to you on a silver platter. You have to work for it. You have to learn. You have to put forth the effort. Sometimes you have to be willing to take action, even if you don't have all the information and you're not 100% sure if you should buy this rental property, but you've talked to your team, you've done your research, you're 80-90% comfortable. A lot of the team will tell you pull the trigger, and sometimes you just need to do it because we hear a lot of stories that, hey, I'm still looking for my first property. It's been 5 years. I should have bought that one 3 years ago. I should have bought that one you talked about at the meetup. But I'm still waiting for the perfect property, and then it's 5 years passes, 7 years passes, and you haven't taken any action or bought your first one. So you don't want to jump in and make big mistakes. That's why it's important to do your research, have a team. But it is important a lot of times just to take action, just step in. And you need progress, not perfection. You don't have to be perfect when you're making these decisions. Just make progress.
We had a good pod today, man.
We did. You had a good crowd.
Good crowd. Our first live studio audience. Can you believe that?
No.
Like we're a movement. Like we're really like they came out for you. They came out because they saw your face.
Not my face.
They came out.
I try to stay off camera for most of the time.
They said I have a face for radio. So that's, pretty cool. It
is. So it's probably true, but I've been very tempted this whole time to just pull a Bob Barker and be like, Drew, Cooking Master, come on down. But we try to have a lot of fun. Real estate doesn't have to be all,
right.
Fallen trees, things on fire, problem tenants, toilets. You're going to have issues. It's not all roses and rainbows. We're not here to tell you
You
it
don't
is.
always lose money.
No. You don't always lose money. Most of the time you make money, and time is your friend, and also making good decisions is your friend.
Yeah,
and you can build that wealth over time. But we're very glad you're here. Milton and I are available. Come out to our meetups, give us a call. text. We're happy to help. I know get the contact information for everybody on the panel is in the folders. Reach out to them. I'm sure they'd be happy to be part of your team too, and we'd highly recommend them. We hope to see you more at tribe events, meetups. We have a lunch at Dorio's. We're doing a Marketplace Monday. If you're looking for deals, those that raise their hands, they're looking for rental properties. We're going to start doing a Marketplace Monday towards the end of the year, where we're bringing off-market deals to, I hate to say to the masses, but to our Investor Tribe members.
And that's member only. So it's important for you to join the tribe. Joining the tribe is free. It's members only. When you're thinking about, when you're joining, it's members only for the Marketplace. So we got a couple other things, but we're definitely glad that everybody came out.
Yes, and you can sign up for your free account, at invtribe.com. We'll be adding video libraries, form libraries. There'll be some leases on there, notice to enter forms. We'll have some disclaimers because depending on what your state is, you have these things reviewed before you use them. But we'll provide you some templates that you can use with your real estate business, in addition to a video library that may have some of our sponsors up there telling you about what is a DSCR loan, what are the important parts of the inspection, how do hard money loans work, the ins and outs of property management, insurance. I know Mike did a good podcast, so sometimes we take snippets of those and we can make videos for our library to help educate all of our tribe members. So you can sign up for that free account at invtribe.com. We'll have a calendar up there of events for our meetups for the Marketplace Monday. The podcast is coming out every week for now, and then pretty soon twice a week.
Yes, so this will air in 2026. So we will be airing on Mondays and Thursdays every week in 2026. Yep, I'm Milton Ali.
And I'm Hampton Scurlock.
Skip the guesswork, join the Investor Tribe.
The Investor Tribe podcast is brought to you by the Investor Tribe, all rights reserved, featuring Hampton Scurlock and Milton Alder, executive producer Drew Cookenmaster, produced and distributed by Bespoke Marketing.